And I received a ping from the on-call for the daily push, who was responsible for pushing code to the servers every day. And they said, hey, we think something that you wrote might have broken log out on mobile devices. And we're like, okay, the rollback is out. Let's all go to all hands. And we were at a stage where people still like to do. I think maybe you're never too big to do demos at all hands.
Yes.
So there's a completely different team from mine. I probably knew some of the people on the team, but I wasn't aware of what they were working on. And they had decided that they were going to do a demo of this because it had just landed. Oh, in that push, they had landed some crucial code, and so they had decided that they were going to do one of these campaigns that would only show up to the person whose laptop was presenting. At all hands. It would only show up for John Yang. And they were going to give him a pop-up on his Dropbox homepage that says, like, get your free watermelons. Click here to get your free watermelons now.
Hi there, folks. This is the War Stories podcast on Critical Point. My name is Kevin Riggle, and I'm here today with Kate Rudolph, who has a story about that time she broke production, because that's what we do here. Is tell those stories. Just before we get started, a tiny little bit of podcast business. We're now also available in audio as well as video on YouTube. If you go to warstories.criticalpoint.tv, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and there are also full edited transcripts of these, because that's often how I prefer to consume podcasts. I'll have more on that at the end of the show, but without further ado, we'll roll the titles and get started. And we're back. Once again, this is War Stories podcast on Critical Point. We're here with Kate Rudolph. Kate, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. My name's Kate. I'm a software engineer, and I've been in the software industry for about 8 years as an IC and a manager. And the story that I have to tell you today is from when I was an intern at Dropbox. So a little baby engineer starting out in the first summer of my career.
And what year was this?
This was summer 2014.
Summer 2014. Okay, so a while ago now.
Yes, a while
some
back.
Water under the bridge since then. Yes.
Long enough that I can look back on it as a funny memory and not, an incredibly embarrassing moment.
Exactly. Yes. So you're working at Dropbox. You're an intern.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking the summer to go experience what software engineering is like inside a I guess Dropbox was in 2014. They'd been around for a minute, so they were not a new company, although not as large as they are today. Probably
700 people at the company at the time that the story takes place.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's a good size. That's still small enough that you can recognize everybody when you see them in the hall, kind of, even if you don't know everybody by name. Okay. So what was kind of the first thing that you noticed? What was the thing that, whether you knew it or not at the time, was a signal that something was wrong?
Yeah. So at the time, I was working on my intern project, which was related to mobile contacts. So you have contacts on your phone. You want to be able to sort of search through them when you're sharing within Dropbox. And that was what my project was related to. And I received a ping from the on-call for the daily push, who was responsible for pushing code to the servers every day. And they said, hey, we think something that you wrote might have broken log out on mobile devices. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, my work was on contacts, not really the login, log out experience. I'm not sure how you got my name, but okay. And my response to this was, well, that doesn't sound good, but I have a one-on-one with my manager right now, so I'm going to go to that. I have a meeting. And I went to my one-on-one with my manager, and I led with this. I was like, oh, the daily push on-call was pinging me about this. And bless this manager, he was like, "Oh, okay, so this one-on-one is over," and he walked me back to my desk and sat with me and helped me respond and figure out what was going on with this incident.
Okay. An important lesson in priorities.
Yes. Right, which I was a baby intern. Like, I didn't know.
Right, absolutely. I mean, if you don't show up for your one-on-one, your manager's going to be mad, right? Like, that's right. No good.
It felt like a much more immediate concern at the time, but my manager set me straight.
Yeah, okay. And so the feature you were working on is like, I have a file in Dropbox, it's a form that I've scanned that I need to share with my admin or something. So I pop open the share widget in Dropbox and like, there's some way for the Dropbox app to talk to the contacts on my phone and be able to offer me those contacts as my, potential people to share to. That was kind of the thing you were working on?
Right. Yeah. Photos in particular, but it was about sort of like ingesting those contacts with your permission from your phone where you have all your contacts and then making them available to you wherever you are on Dropbox. So there were a lot of layers to it, both on the like sort of phone side. We had some cool cross-platform Android and iOS code, and I was sort of working at that layer to be able to only do it once, and then actually store them on the server so that, maybe later you're sharing through the website. You could still use those same people to share with.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. And an important feature for a platform whose whole value proposition is sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you were working on, were you doing this kind of full stack? You were doing the mobile app side as well as the backend side, or?
Yes. Yeah. And I was not the first one to sort of touch contacts at Dropbox. There was something here that was working. The idea for the intern project had come from the fact that we were not really doing a differential sync of your contacts. If you had a ton of contacts, we were ending up using up a bunch of data, re-uploading them. And the idea of my project was to perhaps see what had changed before going on. But as projects tend to do, especially because, again, I was not that experienced, the scope had sort of increased to respecting data limits about like how large your contacts would be, how many of them we could store, making sure that we were not going to be exposed to any lawsuits from storing your contacts like for too long or after you didn't want them stored. And I didn't yet have the skill of being like, okay, let's get the main thing out and like save the data thing, and then we'll fix up all these little things. I was like, oh, that seems important. We better do that and that and that. And so there was all of these sort of details piling up around the main sort of core of the project as well.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it touches a lot of pieces. So yeah,
totally.
Okay. So the person who's on call, someone who's running the daily push, I think what I'm taking from this is the sort of like every day, all of the changes which have been committed to Dropbox is sort of like main repository or merged in. Was Dropbox running sort of like Git ops development where like you've got a feature branch and then you merge into main, or was everything like pretty much happening on main? Like what was the deployment strategy like at this time?
So I think you basically got it. My workflow was to develop on my local branch once everything got approved by my mentor or my manager or whoever was reviewing my code, to merge it into main. I'm so glad we call it that now. It was definitely master at the time.
Right.
And to merge it in, and then at some point in the next 24 hours, when the daily push on call got around to pushing it, they would push it, and then it would be live on the servers. Mobile, of course, had a much slower release cycle.
Okay, yeah.
But
you have to go through the App Store approval process and all that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
They didn't do that nearly as often.
Interesting. So it's not quite what we would these days call continuous delivery. Though it's like it's releases at a pretty fast tempo, where like everything is getting batched up by the day and then getting released. That's interesting.
Right.
Okay.
And it was
cool.
It was a predictable cadence. There was joining the daily push Slack channel was a way to sort of like, for me, it felt more like keeping my ear to the pulse of like whether people are going to be stressed about issues or outages, sort of like figuring out how people are feeling. And there was an on-call rotation. So some number of maybe like 10 or 12 people would take a 3-day in a row shift of being the one to actually do the push.
Okay, interesting. And then being around in case any problems came up to like kick off a response quickly.
Exactly. Monitoring for exceptions and sort of like being responsible, not for fixing them, but for triaging them to, say, me.
Right. Okay. Which it sounds like they did. All right. So your manager walks you back to your desk, and what do you find?
So it turns out that what had happened was that indeed nobody on the mobile apps could sign out of Dropbox on the mobile app, which you wouldn't think would be that common, but when you want to do it, you really kind of want to do it. And the issue is that as one of the many like little pieces of this project, we had realized that we did want to remove your contacts that had come from a phone once you logged out of Dropbox on that phone, right? We decided that it would mean that you didn't want to have that and there was some sort of like some other company had recently had some legal issues with like storing people's contacts for too long.
Was that
so
the
it was
LinkedIn?
In part a conservative move. I forget whether it was LinkedIn. It might have been some like
LinkedIn
Foursquare or Quora or somebody was getting sued. For sure.
Yeah.
And so we decided to do the conservative choice and just sort of like clear out your contacts when you log out of the mobile app. And so this was one of the first pathways where all this new contacts code that I had been written had sort of gotten exposed, because I had mostly been operating under the assumption that everything that I did was feature flagged, right? I had, on the very first day, I had put in a feature flag and turned it off and said, you're only using my new like incremental sync contact situation if I put you in this feature flag, and it's like only me and my manager and my team and stuff like that. So like nobody's going to see this code. And
at worst it will break for us, but
however, I protected like using your contacts and uploading your contacts, but I didn't put this like logging out of the app behind the feature flag. And so it ended up finding a way into my code. And the issue is that I had some bug around if your contact didn't have a last name, which we all have like a couple contacts in there that don't have a last name. If the last name was blank, it was choking. Like my test case certainly didn't have a contact without a last name, because I was naming all of my test cases after like, you know, pop stars like Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, right? So they all had last names. But of course, everyone in the real world has at least one contact on their phone that doesn't have a last name.
And you didn't have any test case for Prince, so there we go.
Exactly. I had to go for the one named pop stars.
There we go. Yes. And so, because this is at least theoretically a general audience podcast, what's a feature flag?
A feature flag. So this is a way that sort of already existed. There was a whole framework at Dropbox and many other places that I've worked already sort of like have this set up. And it's this way to sort of control whether or not your new code or your new feature is active by sort of going into an admin portal and like flipping a switch, essentially, so that you can decouple the code got pushed live to production from my thing got launched. Right.
And this is user by user.
So Dropbox had a very complicated system and then eventually replaced it. So you could do it by like users or by groups, by like certain conditions about like whether the user was paying for Dropbox or not. There's all sorts of different conditions that you could do. And so the typical way that this went, especially for intern projects, is you put the feature flag, you turn it off for everyone, and you turn it on for you and maybe your team. It was sort of like, from everyone I was talking to, like it was pretty safe, right? There was like pretty little that any intern could do behind their feature flag. Or at least that was my assumption. As it turns out, like feature flag engineering is actually, there's kind of a lot to it. And like, I have gone on in my career to like manage entire spreadsheets of the different feature flags we have, controlling the different aspects of the feature, which ones need to be turned on, in which order, and which ones can then be turned off without causing problems.
Got it. Yes. And the thought here is to decouple to the extent possible, like getting the code out on the servers from actually launching the feature, where we realized at some point that like getting the code out on the servers is an engineering problem, and launching a new feature is like a marketing and sales and business like problem, and nobody is happy when like you go to do the big launch and you push out the new code that has the new feature in, and that push like fails for reasons entirely unrelated to the thing that it is that you're launching. So better to get the code out in and running, and make sure better to decouple those as much as possible, because everybody
Absolutely
is happier, and then you don't have the biz people yelling at the engineers while the engineers are trying to debug some failing test case or
Totally. Yeah. And the so like sort of decoupling the business and engineering concerns is like one aspect of it. It's also a lot more immediate, like running that push and making sure that it works, like can take an hour. And what if you told the media that we were going to launch this big new thing at 8 a.m.? You don't want it to be out at 8:45. And another huge reason is testing. And like obviously you want to like write all kinds of tests and test on like staging or like production environments. But it also just makes you feel really secure. If it's already out on production, it works for me. Before I flip this flag open to 100%, like I'm sure that I didn't mess up any of the configuration in my staging environment or whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, because just at the scale that we're operating at these days, that the real world is going to throw up edge cases that are maybe an edge case of 1 or an edge case of 10 or an edge case of 100 relative to a population of millions or tens of millions of users. And so the ability to do staged rollouts, and rather than go from 0 to 100 overnight,
exactly,
in the span of a minute or an hour, to be able to roll it out over days or weeks, so that you can sort of manage the process of finding those edge cases and responding to them, and helps a lot with the stability. It helps a lot with the user experience, and just
absolutely. Yeah, the number of projects that I've been on where it wasn't a big marketing launch, it didn't really matter that everyone get it at the same time. So it's like, 10% of the people have the new contacts experience, and we'll just keep that true for a week, and monitor for crashes, exceptions, everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. So you get back to your desk, you've rolled this out, and sort of knowing now that the issue was around the feature flagging or lack thereof of this logout code. What was the first thing that you really or what was the initial response experience? The on-call comes to you and says, we think it's related to this commit that you pushed. We're not real sure, but
right. Well, all it took was me sort of reading the commit to be like, oh yeah, that is my code. I read the exception. Like the stack trace sort of ended in contacts code that I had been writing. Like, I recognized the code
immediately.
And, I did need to open the link,
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
And so I recognized it, and their main question for me was, is it an easy fix, or do we need to roll back?
Right.
So I needed to sort of learn what that would mean. And I mean, was it an easy fix? Like, ultimately, yes.
Okay.
But it was also like a couple of steps removed from the thing that was breaking. Right. It was like, well, ultimately, I do just need to handle the case where this field isn't populated. But I probably want to do that for every single other field. And maybe this is masking some other bug deeper into my context code, right? Like the real issue is that none of this is production tested. Everything that we're talking about, turn the feature flag on for 10%, that had not happened.
No,
yet.
Yeah, exactly.
We were way earlier. I wasn't expecting any of this code to be live. And so I believe a day or two later, I went through and sort of checked that the feature flag would actually be applied on that case, and that people wouldn't be falling into my potentially buggy, untested code when they were trying to log out. But the answer was, and I sort of got to this pretty quickly in discussion with my manager, who started listening to me describe the things that would need to be fixed. No, it's not a quick fix. It does need to roll back.
Yeah. Okay. And so there it's literally just they you put together a branch which removed the code from the pull request that you had submitted, and they walked that through the release process and they pushed that out to live.
So that was one possibility, was to essentially revert my changes from the most
and
recent
only your
time,
changes, right?
And then sort of like go forward,
hoping that nothing else had been touching similar pieces of the code. But yeah,
right. Assuming that there are no merge conflicts or sort of like more complicated issues that would happen. Instead of doing that, we decided to do an even faster thing with the way that the push was set up and just roll back that day's push.
The whole thing. Okay.
The whole thing. And I think possibly that had to happen like on the previous day or the day before or something, because I kind of remember the code that I had merged was, it had felt like it was from a while ago. When I first got this thing, I was like, I don't think I have anything in today's, right? And so I think, I don't remember specifically, so I shouldn't cite this precisely, but I do think that it was a thing where, like, sometimes it's broken. And then the answer is like, okay, the daily push didn't go out today. Like, your code that you thought was going to go out today, it's going out tomorrow.
Right, okay. Would they then, like, would new code get added to the push, or was there sort of, like, build-up of pushes as if there were
this is why I'm thinking, I think the code that I had landed on main was from the previous week. So I think we were, like, already in this sort of build-up of pushes situation.
Ooh, okay. Yes. And we don't like work in progress of that kind. That, that's
right. But the issue is deemed like people can't, like, it's like a claustrophobia thing. Like, people can't get out of Dropbox for like locking them into the app. They want to log out of the app. Like, we have to fix that. That's like pretty blocking.
There are some security, reasons also why you might need to log people out. Like, for example, if somebody's password gets compromised and they need to change it, like you want to invalidate all the old session tokens that people logged out, so that those old sessions that maybe an adversary has access to aren't, active anymore. So it's pretty important. Logout turns out to be pretty important.
Right. In a way that I didn't really realize when I was, it just felt like crossing a T and dotting an I to make sure that they got removed at logout.
Right. Well, and somebody also looked at this code, somebody reviewed this code and they're like, oh yeah, seems good. And missed the implications. Yeah. Because at least that's my guess. Knowing who was involved in Dropbox's engineering culture at the time.
Oh yeah.
Code review was a big part of it.
I worked with awesome people who just, sometimes made mistakes. But regardless, it was, maybe it was a Friday afternoon. It was a Friday afternoon because we had all hands that day.
Only the best incidents happen on Fridays.
And they decided, you know what, like, fixing forward, it's not that straightforward. We are going to do a rollback. And then I do think that it was a like revert specifically my change, merge that in and then try again to go forward, so that we didn't, like you're saying, have like days and days of work in progress. But the immediate fix was to roll back, not to revert and go forwards.
Got it. Okay. So there's like kind of a button they can press in whatever the deployment interface is to just like, roll back the day's push.
Yes, I believe so. I'm not sure whether they were doing some sort of blue-green and they still had the old stuff. I was, again, a lot of this sort of felt like a black box to me as an intern who had been there for maybe 6 weeks. But I gave the information to the on-call for the daily push, who was able to use that to decide that the thing we needed to do to fix logout was to do a rollback to the previous version. And we're like, okay, the rollback is out. Let's all go to all hands.
Great. Okay.
Because there's a chapter 2 of this story.
Okay. So successfully rolled the change back. Everything looks good.
Everyone can log out on their mobile apps.
Can log out on their.
Fine.
Yep. The spike in was it customer cases, or was it like some kind of alerting and monitoring that flagged the logout issue? Do you know?
Yeah, there was monitoring for the exception.
Okay. Oh, I guess it's like mobile app logout goes to 0, where it's been trucking along at like,
right, exactly. So we saw
10 or
a
20 an hour.
Graph.
You're like, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. So it's Friday. You successfully rolled back. Disaster averted. Let's roll into all hands and then hit the bars or go home or whatever it is we do on Fridays.
Well,
all
first
right.
we have to go to all hands,
Right.
and we were at a stage where people still like to do. I think maybe you're never too big to do demos at all
No.
hands.
Yes.
And there was a completely different
700
team.
people. It's a great
Yeah,
700 people. It's a great size. Yes. Yes.
So there's a completely different team from mine. I, probably knew some of the people on the team, but I wasn't aware of what they were working on at all. But they were building a new way to basically show ads for Dropbox in Dropbox. So we weren't like, opening advertising on Dropbox.com. But if you were there, that we wanted to be able to show you with like quickly updatable ways to show you different ads or different pictures in different locations on the site, maybe a pop-up or on the sidebar or on the top. Just like, hey, consider upgrading to Pro. And then that way an engineer doesn't have to say like, oh, hey, I want to build a pop-up and sort of like build a whole new pop-up for the new campaign of, oh, this month we've decided to offer you 30% off or whatever. So the idea was that someone could go into some admin portal and put a campaign in there, and then it would show up, right? You basically store the campaign in the database, and then this new feature shows the campaign sort of based on whether you're one of the lucky few that gets the 30% off, whatever. And they had decided that they were going to do a demo of this because it had just landed that day. And so they were going to do a demo of it at all hands, and they had decided that they were going to
push.
Oh, in that push, they had landed some crucial code, and so they had decided that they were going to do one of these campaigns that would only show up to the person whose laptop was presenting,
right,
at all hands. It would only show up for John Yang, and they were going to give him a pop-up on his Dropbox homepage that says like, "Get your free watermelons. Click here to get your free watermelons now."
Okay.
Watermelons were a sort of inside joke at Dropbox. One of the co-founders absolutely loved watermelons. It was commonly used for joking around like this. But they were going to restrict it using one of the elements of the feature that allowed you to restrict it to a certain audience. They were going to restrict it only to John Yang.
Great. Sort of like the feature flag stuff we were just talking about, except I'm guessing a different mechanism.
Right, but it was applied specifically to these to these campaigns.
Creatives, these campaigns, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So and so all of the code had been going in over the previous month to display the campaigns, to make it look perfect and centered and have all the assets that you might want and everything. And then they had put this watermelon campaign in the database. Unfortunately, the code that controls only show it to John Yang had only been in that code that, because of me, had been so recently rolled back.
Okay.
So the campaign worked great. It just showed up for everyone. Like everyone on Dropbox.
Like on the internet,
everyone who went to Dropbox.com had a button that said, get your free watermelon here. Click here to get your watermelons. And then you click and it goes away.
Okay.
And that was it.
Okay. Whoops.
Whoops.
And it's not like April 1st or anything. Like
No, it was the middle of summer. It was it was like July.
Well, that's when you want free watermelon, right? But
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So there were definitely people posting screenshots on Twitter like,
okay. So it sounds like,
where do I get my watermelon?
Right. So it sounds like the demo worked in all hands.
Absolutely.
Great. When was it noticed that this demo had maybe escaped its confinement?
When people started posting on Twitter.
Okay, great. Social media team is like sitting in all hands maybe and going like, wait a minute. Okay.
This is not what we meant to use this feature for.
No. Okay. So, did you then get pulled into another incident hot on the heels of the previous one?
So I was not involved in remediating this one.
Okay.
I wish I remembered more clearly, but I do think we did sort of a revert of my buggy change, and we're in the process of the hour-long process of getting that one out.
Okay.
So it was sort of like forward minus me, essentially, and minus the thing that I had changed to break things. But there is a period in there where everyone got offered watermelon.
Okay, great. Okay, so once once
And
the
a
days
quicker fix
go
for
on.
that, of course, would be just take the campaign down, which
Sure. Sure.
once you've
Yeah.
added
Okay.
the campaign to the database, you can also
You
remove
can
it.
just remove it from the database. Okay.
Right.
Well, that's good. Okay. So the days push minus your change was already in progress, and so once that landed, you just
Right.
kind of had to wait for that to land, and then the code to gate the campaigns to particular people also landed, and then no one on the internet was being offered free watermelon anymore.
Oh, too bad.
Okay,
I don't think
too
we
bad.
gave out a single free watermelon as a result of that incident.
What?
I know, right?
It's a marketing opportunity. Come on. Like organic marketing even. Okay, that's unfortunate, but it sounds like it was relatively little sort of like, customer blowback or, harm or like
I mean, of inaccurate promises to put on your website, it's a very silly one, right? And I
it's
think,
incredibly silly. Yes.
even with the audience of Dropbox, which has, like millions and millions of users, like
Right.
most people have a sense of humor. It was
have a sense of humor about it. Yeah, exactly.
As far as embarrassing mistakes go, it's like embarrassing silly and not like
exactly
mortifying.
Embarrassing and shameful. Yeah
Right.
Cool. So what happened when you came back in next week on Monday?
So certainly, didn't hear the end of it.
Okay.
There was, I think, a number of lessons learned and things that were changed. But sort of like being an intern, I wasn't like, leading the charge to sort of like make the changes overall that needed to happen. But like one thing, for example, I don't think we demoed in all hands on production for the rest of the years that I was there. If you need to do a demo at all hands and it's not, already out to 100%, like you can demo on staging. It's fine. You can demo on your local machine. Nobody's looking at the URL.
Got it. Yes.
You could just not project the URL. Nobody needs to know that this is not live. Like, do demo magic. Don't mess with our actual users.
Okay. Good. Yes. Probably for the best.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think another thing that, I certainly learned, and I don't want to say that Dropbox learned it because many of the smart people there probably were already aware.
It's an ongoing process.
But sort of the, like, when you have to do a rollback, it's not without consequences. Right. And so, anytime you change the code, you can break things. And even if you go back to a known good thing, right? Like any data could have been added under the new code that, maybe isn't compatible with or is not going to behave the way that you expect on old things, or on old code. And so the sort of the act of doing a rollback is it safe? Well, it depends a lot on how every single engineer who's been putting code into this machine and expecting it to go out is expecting it to work. So as long as we have the expectations that your code can get rolled back once but not twice, then that the push after your push, then you're safe and it's not going to get rolled back. And maybe you do want that guarantee, or maybe your company doesn't have that guarantee, and so you need to always write code with the assumption that it's not going to get rolled back until, I don't know, the month safe? Probably, no one would do that. But maybe the daily push wants to have a guarantee about that. And I think we were at a place that summer where pretty often you would, pass in the hallway the stressed daily push on call who's like, oh, we haven't had a daily push in 3 days. Will people stop, breaking the build or whatever?
Right.
And you're like, yep, we should stop breaking the build. But it turns out that that's dangerous for more reasons than just people's code isn't going out. Because you need to be able to reason about that when you're thinking about how your code's going to make it to production.
Exactly.
In the end.
Yeah. The mental models of everybody at the company about the state of the production systems and
totally,
the state of their changes relative to everybody else's changes and those production systems matter a great deal. So the team that had pushed out this marketing this advertising campaign feature, had they realized that the daily push had been rolled back, or?
I don't think they had, because I think they would have
Okay.
noticed that this
Okay.
plan to demo in production was not quite going to work. I said at the beginning, sort of like joining the Daily Push Slack channel felt to
Right.
me mostly like a way to keep my ear to the ground,
Yeah.
and like, know whether these things were happening and sort of like be around for, and people would
Right.
post memes. It was fun to sort of like feel like you were
Yeah.
in the know. But actually, there's like a
Yeah.
couple more, like way more important reasons to be in that. Like one is like to have awareness of whether the code that I had written had gone out, and two, like, for the team that worked on this campaigns feature, to have awareness of whether the code that you're counting on going out actually
Right.
did.
Actually went out. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That keeping your mental model in sync with reality to the extent that you can. Yeah.
Totally.
Super important. Yeah. Interesting. So what kind of, being an intern, you might, I'm sure you didn't see all of this, but like what kind of changes were put in place that you observed sort of like as a result of this, besides just not demoing in production at all hands?
I do believe that there was a doc uh, about just exactly what we're talking about, how to reason about the daily push, sort of circulated for people. Like, and I believe that after this incident, it was not necessarily 2 days, because I think there were still situations where the daily push could fail to go out, but 2 pushes afterwards, you were sure that your code would not be rolled back. They said we won't roll back 2.
That's a lot. Like for it at the kind of velocity of 700 people. So like about 30% of those are engineers, meaning you have 200, 250 engineers. Some fraction of those are committing, code every day. Like
Totally.
2 days worth of code. That is a lot of work to go like try to back out, and not all of that is even as easy to back out. If it's a schema migration in the database or something, like that database is not getting unmigrated probably
Yeah.
quickly.
Oh yeah, totally. Again, I can't tell whether this was sort of like an organizational like clarification of the way things work and sort of expectations, or like this was the point in my career where I was learning that some changes you really do need to stage into multiple branches, multiple commits, and then multiple pushes, right? If you're trying to like change the name of something, you really do need to make sure that the back end will accept both of them and do the same thing. And then the front end will start changing one thing, and then the back end will stop accepting the other thing. And you need to be aware of like, okay, I have parts A, B, and C of my thing, but like, what if I have part B out and they roll back to where I only have part A? Like, let me code in a defensive enough way that like my thing won't be the issue that compounds the issue that caused the rollback.
So there was a certain amount of education and a certain amount of sort of like standardization or process.
Right.
Like we wrote down our process a little bit more formally to be like, no, okay,
Right.
here's how long you should wait before putting any weight on this. Other changes that you saw?
I don't know particularly. I think I certainly like learned a lot, and like had a sort of change of mindset of like what sort of counted as done for my work. I was sort of like working on multiple branches and multiple code bases because I had the mobile code base and sort of the server mono repo. And up until that point, like done for me really felt like merged. Once I had merged it to main, it was off my plate. It wasn't sitting over here in the like very top of mind list of branches that I'm working on. It wasn't in the code review tool. It was done.
Right. Now it's somebody else's problem.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And then like at the end of the summer, I would turn on the feature flag, or go through the process of carefully turning that on. But there was this whole step that like, because it hadn't been my responsibility, it didn't feel like it was my problem. But actually, yeah, like my code going onto servers for the first time, like always had the capability to break stuff.
Right.
And
yes.
it did.
Yes. 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 that transition, I mean, that's a transition we've gone through at the organizational level. When I started in industry, sometimes we were shipping code to customers, like almost shrink wrap style, but this idea, dev throws the flaming bag of code over the wall to ops, and then it's ops's problem to make it run in production, is something that we have moved away from, and it's been very, very healthy that we have done so. But that idea of that it's not done until it's running and out there in the world is has been something we've gone through as an industry, and it's been very, very important and healthy for us, because there was no way we were going to build anything nearly at the scale that we're at if we kept on in the old world.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Besides the sort of okay, now you gotta wait two pushes before it's really live, were there other changes in Dropbox's release process that you saw around either testing or alerting on things like this? Or
broadly, no. And the daily push rotation with, a person who would be on call 3 working days in a row and then rotate to the next person, they monitored the same sort of homegrown exception service and triage to the person that they thought broke things. I think essentially throughout my time there, for the server monorepo, it was
interesting.
And it was,
and I'm getting the sense that you came on after Dropbox, or after your internship full time at Dropbox.
I did, yeah. I essentially immediately. I had intended to go back for a 1-year master's in college, but I stayed on at the end of the summer and never went back.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. Oh, so this was the summer after your senior year. You graduated.
This was the summer after my senior year. I graduated. And at the end of the year, they'll tell each of the interns whether they get a return offer. And through the summer, I was like, well, I think I might accept it immediately. So is there any way you could tell me whether I got the return offer a little before the very last week of my internship? And they were like, we'll see. And we were in the we'll see phase when I offered watermelons to everyone in the world. So I was like, no. But ultimately, I did get that offer.
It sounds like it worked out. Yeah. And it turns out that having free time and disposable income by being in industry is a lot more fun than...
I was learning so much more at Dropbox than I could imagine learning taking another semester of classes.
Yeah. Cool. So obviously, there were not that many sort of personal repercussions on you as a result of this. The organization...
No, everyone was absolutely more mature than blame the poor hapless intern. Thank goodness.
Yes. Good. And you never made the same mistake again.
I never did.
Yeah, funny how that works.
I learned a whole lot about the responsibilities that I have to the whole system of engineering and other people that goes into turning code that I wrote on my machine against my dev environment into code that runs for millions of people.
Yeah. How so? What kind of takeaways did you have there?
What I was talking about is sort of changing my definition of done and sort of learning at what, at what points in time things become available to different people. We had kind of complicated staging and canary thing going on before this production push. And then, again, it varied for me based on what specific repo I was working in, whether it was the servers or the cross-platform mobile or one of the sort of individual platforms, and just sort of connecting that dot. When I was new to being an engineer, it kind of felt like a lot to just have the code work on my machine, right? Even getting to that and, not having bugs and having my tests pass and, figuring out all of the Git wizardry I need to do to get the right code into the right branch or whatever, all of that to ship that, it felt like enough.
Already an enormous lift, but there's this whole other piece and kind of work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like being a writer versus a publisher, right? The code that I write needs to also run on all of the servers. It needs to be, distributed via, the newspaper or Substack or whatever. And that's like a completely different type of work that is also engineering. And this hadn't been on my radar screen.
Nice, nice. Um, how long did you stay at Dropbox then? You were an intern in 2014 and stayed on, and
I stayed through late 2017.
Okay, nice.
And I worked on contacts, and we were a team. We were the contacts team. We were team people, identity, and contacts for, I would say, like 2.5 years at that point.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, so you stayed on the same project even. That's impressive.
I moved from mobile contacts to like more server-side contacts. It was a full stack team relating to everything who you are and who you know on Dropbox.
Okay. Nice.
And it was an awesome team.
Yeah. Cool. How did the other team react to that team that had built the internal advertising platform?
I think, as much as I like to like kind of take credit for this one because the rollback was indeed my fault, I think a little bit more of it fell on them in terms of the sort of like repercussions and like having been the ones to cause this, like, we're not going to demo in production. They were sort of like seen as a little bit more of the reckless ones, which I don't know, putting in a campaign to offer free watermelons that relied on code that was landing that day, like, is it reckless or is it startup culture?
Right. Yeah.
Move
like fast.
It doesn't seem that bad to me, but it was certainly a shared responsibility thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the feature, I think, was pretty successful, watermelons aside, and was used for quite some time until the entire homepage was redesigned and none of their sort of like surface area looked correct. But
exactly, yeah, I definitely know that I saw internal cross-selling, like upgrade to an annual plan, or we've just launched a new photo carousel or whatever, like all this stuff. So I'm pretty sure that I interacted with their feature. There's a thing that you've heard me say a bunch, but I say it every time, that like the most really bad incidents are not the result of what we might call a point failure, an individual push, sign error in one line of code, a bolt shearing, a belt snapping, but they're the intersection of multiple processes which are both operating correctly, but that interact in a way that the people involved in them don't foresee or understand, and so their mental models get out of sync with the world, and then their mental models get reset very quickly when when things happen. So that feels
often the consequence of the like multiple interacting systems, each of which are working as intended, is everything completely grinds to a halt, or you get outages or data loss. And I just think this example is particularly funny because you didn't get anything like that. You just got like mildly embarrassing advertisements.
Right, exactly. On some level, we might call this a near miss. Like, we might call this, and it's good that it sounds like the Dropbox, engineering and business organizations like really took it as a like opportunity to learn and improve. Rather than either being like, oh, haha, that was funny, that doesn't really matter. Like, that couldn't possibly happen in a way that hurts people. Or also like coming down on you hard. So
anytime something's showing up on the homepage of every single user that like none of us expected to be there, like that's a wake up call for sure.
That's a wake up call. Yeah, exactly. And good to treat it.
Not just gonna brush that one off.
No. Good. Was there any like press coverage, or did it really just hit social media and then sort of?
No. Oh man, if there was, I really want to link to that article, but I think it was just social media.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
It would be amazing.
I'll have to see if I can dig up some Twitter posts for put them up as B-roll or something.
Yeah, there must be a screenshot of it out there somewhere. Someone must have. That's the internet, right? Nothing ever truly goes away.
Right. Yes. Cool. Well, this has been really lovely chatting, Kate. I'm so glad we could do this. when we were talking and you're like, are you sure this is a podcast episode? I'm like, no,
Yeah, really.
I know this is. And I could see the YouTube thumbnail in my head.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, which is critical. So I'm glad we could have this conversation. Any parting thoughts? First let's say, where can people find you online, if there is a place that people can find you online?
I prefer that they not. I'm not a very online person.
Love it.
Not trying to plug any of my accounts. I don't need people to find my dog through your podcast. Great,
perfect. Are you still doing coaching things?
Yeah, I am. My friend Andy Sheff started a coaching company called Practica, where people can use their learning and development budgets that their company has towards coaching. And I'm one of the coaches on their platform. So I can help you talk about, if that one time you broke production, and see if there's anything we can learn from that.
There we go. Yes. Or because this was your first incident, right? Like this was your first time through any kind of incident process?
Totally.
Yeah, okay.
It may have been the first time Dropbox users touched my code.
Okay.
I think it was 6 weeks into the internship. Like beyond, adding my name to the about page or something.
That's about. First you have to find the bathrooms and the coffee machine, and there's a certain amount of onboarding and.
I was trying to learn C++ at the time.
Ooh, okay,
the whole thing.
That's a whole thing. And I don't know about you, but that wasn't something that they taught us in school. They were just kind of well, it's a programming language. We've taught you 3 other programming languages, so you figure it out. But
exactly.
It's not a forgiving language to figure out. And so about 6 weeks in is when
totally.
things would start to cook.
Things are coming to a head. We have had enough time to realize the edge case about the log out situation. We've had enough time to figure out what we want to do about it. It's finally landed, and As far as introductions go, I'm thankful that it was this and not a days long outage.
Absolutely.
Could have been a lot worse.
Yes, very much so. And glad that you were in a supportive organization that could, respond well to it and provide, everyone involved with the tools they needed to, get back to normal operation quickly and, metabolize the learnings in a productive way.
Dropbox was an awesome place to be, just surrounded by so many people who are really, really good at this already, and just an awesome place to learn.
Kate, this has been lovely. Folks, this has been Critical Point with Kate Rudolph, about that time she gave the internet free watermelon, or at least offered it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe down below. The algorithm likes it, and also I am still just getting the channel going, and it makes me very personally gratified to know that people are engaging with what we're making and want to hear more. If you've ever had a commit you made roll back unexpectedly, leave a comment below. Like I said at the top of the show, we're now also available in audio on all the major podcast platforms. Check them out at warstories.criticalpoint.tv. There are also full edited transcripts up there, so if you prefer to read your podcasts, check them out too. If you have an incident story you'd like to tell here, please email us at hello@complexsystems.group. Also, I'm always looking for people who aren't cis white dudes to feature, because obviously, everyone else has great incident stories too. I'm sourcing people through my networks, but there's lots of folks who I don't know who I would love to talk with. So if this is you, please consider yourself especially encouraged to reach out. That email address again is hello@complexsystems.group. Intro and outro music is Senpai Funk by Paul T. Starr. You can find me on Twitter as @KevinRiggle and on Mastodon @KevinRiggle@ioc.exchange. My consulting company, Complex Systems Group, is on the web at complexsystems.group. And with that, folks, till next time.